The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Esperanza Ghost. Morales dragged the industrial mop across the polished concrete floor of the Naval Special Warfare Command briefing room. At 4:30 hours, the facility was empty except for the skeletal night watch and the cleaning crew. She moved with the practiced efficiency of someone who had learned to make herself invisible, her maintenance coveralls bearing no indication of the distinguished flying cross hidden beneath her civilian clothes at home. The irony wasn't lost on her. 3 years ago, she had been briefing admirals in rooms like this one. Now she was mopping them. The Pentagon's administrative restructuring had been swift and merciless. A sexual assault allegation that went nowhere. A subsequent performance review that somehow found fault with her previously exemplary record. And finally, a medical discharge for stress-related complications that had never existed. The pipeline from decorated combat pilot to invisible maintenance worker was shorter than most people realized. Ghost squeezed the mop with mechanical precision, watching dirty water spiral down the drain. She had learned not to think about the FA-18 Super Hornet she used to fly, its afterburners painting orange streaks across Afghan skis. She didn't dwell on the 73 combat missions or the Taliban convoy she'd neutralized with a precision strike that saved an entire Marine platoon. The Navy had made it clear. None of that mattered anymore. The briefing room's large monitors flickered to life unexpectedly, casting blue light across the empty chairs. Ghost paused, wringing out her mop. The night duty officer must have triggered the system remotely. On-screen satellite feeds showed heat signatures moving across a mountainous region she recognized immediately, the Pakistan-Afghanistan border near the Spin Gar Mountains. The timestamp read current and the activity patterns were wrong. Too organized, too coordinated. Something was happening, something big. The double doors at the far end of the room burst open. A stream of personnel flooded in, SEALs in full kit, intelligence officers clutching tablets, and a three-star admiral whose face Ghost recognized from her previous life. They moved with the controlled urgency of professionals responding to a developing crisis. None of them noticed the janitor with the mop bucket. Ghost melted toward the wall, her training taking over. She had perfected the art of being overlooked, but old habits died hard. Her eyes tracked the tactical displays, reading the satellite feeds with the expertise of someone who had spent years interpreting battlefield intelligence. The heat signatures were forming a perimeter around something, a compound maybe, or a cave system. The pattern was familiar, too familiar. It looked exactly like the intelligence preparation for Operation Neptune Spear, the raid that had taken down Osama bin Laden. But that was impossible. That target was long dead, buried at sea over a decade ago. So why were America's most elite warriors preparing for what appeared to be a carbon copy of history's most famous special operations mission? Admiral Reeves strode to the front of the room, his weathered face grim under the artificial light. "Gentlemen, we have a problem. 3 hours ago, CIA assets in Islamabad intercepted communications that suggest we didn't get everyone we thought we got in Abbottabad. There may have been a body double." The room fell silent except for the quiet hum of electronics and the distant sound of Ghost's mop bucket wheels on concrete. She had stopped moving entirely, every muscle tensed as the implications crashed over her like a rogue wave. The most wanted man in history might still be alive. Ghost pressed herself against the wall, her maintenance coveralls suddenly feeling like camouflage. The tactical displays showed real-time drone footage of a compound that bore an eerie resemblance to the one Navy SEALs had raided 13 years earlier. Same walls, same layout, different location. The intelligence briefing unfolded like a nightmare déjà vu. Bin Laden's alleged survival, his network's resurrection, and most disturbing of all, credible intelligence suggesting an imminent attack on American soil. The target appears to be Washington, D.C., during tomorrow's joint session of Congress. Admiral Reeves continued, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Every major political figure will be in one building. If these intercepts are accurate, we're looking at a decapitation strike that would effectively end American democracy as we know it. Ghost's knuckles whitened around the mop handle. She had flown missions over the Hindu Kush Mountains, had seen the terror networks from 30,000 feet. The geography on those screens was burned into her memory from countless bombing runs and reconnaissance flights. She knew those valleys, those peaks, those cave systems better than most of the officers in this room. Team leader Travis Hammer McKinnon stepped forward, his scarred face betraying no emotion. "Timeline, sir." 18 hours, Reeves replied. "The compound is in Pakistani airspace, roughly 200 clicks from the Afghan border. Same political complications as last time, same need for absolute deniability. This mission doesn't exist, and if it goes wrong, we never knew you." The SEAL operators exchanged glances. Ghost recognized the look, professionals calculating odds, risk assessment, the mathematics of survival. She had worn that same expression countless times, usually right before someone asked her to fly into situations that should have been impossible. "Air support?" McKinnon asked. "Negative," Reeves said. "Pakistani air defenses are significantly upgraded since 2011. We can't risk a conventional air package. This is boots on the ground only, with limited helicopter extraction." Ghost felt her chest tighten. No air support meant no top cover, no immediate extraction if things went sideways, no suppressive fires if the mission compromised. It was a suicide run disguised as a special operation, the kind of mission that created Gold Star families and posthumous medals. Lieutenant Commander Diana Phoenix Reyes, the mission's intelligence officer, activated another display. "Compound is hardened, multiple escape routes, estimated 30 to 40 hostiles with military-grade weapons. Heat signatures suggest possible underground tunnels, which could complicate extraction significantly." The tactical picture crystallized in Ghost's mind with painful clarity. She had studied similar compounds from the cockpit of her Super Hornet, had delivered precision strikes on targets just like this one. The approaches were limited, the escape routes predictable, and without air support, the mission parameters were borderline impossible. Her fingers unconsciously traced the outline of her maintenance badge, but underneath the fabric, she could feel the slight indentation where her pilot wings used to rest. The Navy had stripped her of her rank, her aircraft, and her identity, but they couldn't erase the tactical knowledge burned into her neural pathways by years of combat experience. These SEALs were about to walk into a carefully prepared kill zone, and nobody in that room seemed to fully grasp the magnitude of the threat they were facing. McKinnon's team huddled around a tactical map, their voices low but urgent. Ghost caught fragments, insertion points, exfiltration routes, contingency plans that sounded increasingly desperate. They were brave men, elite operators, but they were planning a ground assault on a target that screamed for air power. She knew she should leave, push her cart to another section, maintain her invisibility. Instead, she found herself studying the satellite feeds with the intensity of someone who had once held lives in her hands at Mach 1.2. "Satellite imagery shows 3 potential landing zones," Phoenix continued, highlighting areas on the display. "LZ Alpha is closest to the compound, but exposes the team to direct fire from multiple positions. LZ Bravo offers better concealment but increases movement time by 40 minutes. LZ Charlie provides the most security but requires a 2-hour foot movement through terrain that's heavily patrolled." Ghost's mind automatically calculated flight paths, angle of attack, weapons engagement zones. The compound sat in a natural bowl surrounded by ridgelines that would funnel any ground assault into predetermined killing fields. It was a textbook defensive position, and whoever had chosen it understood American tactical doctrine intimately. Admiral Reeves checked his watch. 17 hours, 30 minutes. I want final mission parameters in 6 hours, launch authorization in 12. This is a presidential directive, gentlemen. Failure is not an option. The briefing dissolved into smaller working groups, communications specialists, weapons experts, medical personnel, and intelligence analysts all converging around their respective stations. The room filled with the controlled chaos of professionals under extreme pressure. Ghost began pushing her cart toward the exit, but something made her pause near the communications station. Technical Sergeant Rodriguez was arguing with a Navy cryptologist about satellite coverage windows and blackout zones. The communication dead zone lasts 47 minutes, Rodriguez said, frustration evident in his voice. If the team goes dark during that window, we won't know if they need emergency extraction until it's potentially too late. The cryptologist shrugged. It's a known limitation. The orbital mechanics don't care about our operational timeline. Ghost's breath caught. 47 minutes without communications meant 47 minutes where the SEALs would be completely on their own, cut off from intelligence updates, weather reports, or emergency support. In hostile territory, surrounded by enemies who knew they were coming, 47 minutes might as well be an eternity. She had been in that communications dead zone before, flying solo missions over the same mountain ranges, relying on dead reckoning and instinct when the satellites couldn't reach her. The feeling of absolute isolation, of being truly alone in enemy airspace, was something that either broke pilots or forged them into something harder than steel. These SEALs were about to experience that same isolation, but they'd be on foot, vulnerable, surrounded by hostiles who had 13 years to prepare for exactly this kind of mission. Ghost pushed her cart through the exit, but her mind remained locked on the tactical problem unfolding in that briefing room. Every instinct she had developed over years of combat flying screamed that this mission was flawed at its foundation. And tomorrow, good men were going to die because of it. The corridor outside the briefing room stretched endlessly under harsh fluorescent lighting. Ghost moved her cart with mechanical precision, but her thoughts raced through tactical scenarios like a flight computer processing targeting solutions. The mission parameters she had overheard violated every principle of successful special operations. Insufficient intelligence, compromised insertion routes, no contingency for communications blackout, and most critically, no air support for a target that demanded it. She had seen missions like this before, during her deployment to Afghanistan. Operators pushed beyond reasonable risk thresholds because the political stakes demanded impossible solutions. The results were always the same: flag-draped coffins and classified after-action reports that nobody would ever read. The maintenance closet at the end of the corridor was her destination, a cramped space filled with cleaning supplies and industrial equipment. Ghost unlocked it with her security badge, wheeled the cart inside, and closed the door behind her. For the first time in hours, she was completely alone. Her hands shook slightly as she pulled out her phone. The contact list was pathetically short: her landlord, a grocery store, and Dr. Sarah Kim, the VA therapist assigned to help veterans transition to civilian life. The therapy sessions were mandatory, part of her discharge agreement, but Dr. Kim had proven to be surprisingly perceptive about the challenges faced by former military personnel. More importantly, Dr. Kim was married to Colonel James Kim, currently serving as Deputy Director of Operations at the Pentagon. Ghost stared at the phone for several minutes, knowing that making this call would cross a line she couldn't uncross. She was a janitor now, invisible, forgotten, officially irrelevant to national security operations. Interfering with an active mission would be grounds for immediate termination and possibly criminal charges. But those SEALs were walking into a trap, and she was quite possibly the only person in the facility who fully understood the tactical implications of what she had witnessed. Her finger hovered over Dr. Kim's number. The call would go to voicemail at this hour, but the message would be forwarded, would be taken seriously, would cascade up through channels until someone with actual authority reviewed the mission parameters. Or it would be dismissed as the desperate attention-seeking of a disgraced former pilot who couldn't accept her new reality. Ghost closed the phone without dialing. Instead, she sat on an overturned bucket and forced herself to think through the problem with the same methodical approach she had once applied to air-to-ground targeting. The compound's location wasn't random. Someone had chosen that specific valley for specific reasons: natural defensive positions, limited approach routes, proximity to escape routes that led deeper into the mountain ranges. The intelligence suggested bin Laden's presence, but what if that intelligence was deliberately leaked? What if the entire setup was designed to lure American Special Operations Forces into a carefully prepared ambush? The thought sent ice through her veins. She had encountered similar tactics in Afghanistan, where Taliban commanders had used false intelligence to draw American forces into kill zones. The pattern was always the same: tempting intelligence, tight timelines that prevented thorough analysis, and political pressure that overrode tactical caution. Ghost opened her phone again, but this time she accessed the internet browser. Her security clearance was long revoked, but the maintenance staff Wi-Fi network provided unrestricted access to open-source information. She began searching for recent intelligence reports from the Pakistan-Afghanistan border region. What she found made her blood run cold. Over the past 6 months, there had been a steady pattern of coalition forces encountering sophisticated ambushes in that exact region. IED attacks that demonstrated advanced knowledge of American tactical procedures, small unit actions that seemed designed to probe response times and capabilities, and most disturbing of all, several instances where American communications had been jammed using technology that shouldn't have been available to non-state actors. Someone was studying American Special Operations Forces with the methodical precision of a professional military organization. Someone who understood not just tactics and equipment, but also the political pressures that drove operational decision-making. The mission briefing suddenly took on a different character in her mind. Not a legitimate intelligence opportunity, but the culmination of an elaborate deception operation designed to eliminate America's most elite counterterrorism capability in a single, devastating ambush. Ghost scrolled through more reports, her pilot's training and threat assessment kicking into overdrive. Pattern recognition was survival in combat aviation, the ability to see connections, to identify threats before they became lethal. Every instinct she had developed over years of flying in contested airspace was screaming warnings that nobody in that briefing room seemed to hear. She closed the browser and opened her contacts again. This time, she didn't hesitate. Dr. Kim answered on the third ring, her voice professional despite the early hour. "This is Dr. Kim. If this is an emergency, please hang up and dial 911. Dr. Kim, this is Esperanza Morales. I need you to listen very carefully, and I need you to trust me. American lives are in immediate danger, and I have information that could prevent a catastrophe." There was a pause, then Dr. Kim's voice returned, fully alert now. "Esperanza, are you having another episode? We discussed the importance of distinguishing between past trauma and present reality. This isn't PTSD, doctor. This is happening right now, in real time. I need you to contact your husband immediately. There's a special operations mission launching in approximately 16 hours, and it's based on compromised intelligence. The operators are walking into an ambush." Another pause, longer this time. Ghost could almost hear Dr. Kim's mental gears turning, weighing professional obligations against the urgency in her patient's voice. "Esperanza, I understand your concern, but you're a maintenance worker now. How could you possibly have access to information about special operations?" The question hung in the air like ordnance waiting to detonate. Ghost closed her eyes, knowing that her next words would either save lives or destroy what remained of her credibility. Because I'm cleaning the briefing rooms where they plan these missions, and because I used to fly FA-18 Super Hornets in the same region where this operation is targeting. I know that terrain, Doctor. I know the tactical signatures. And what I saw tonight is going to get a lot of good men killed. Silence stretched across the phone connection. Ghost could hear her own heartbeat, could feel sweat forming on her palms despite the cool air in the maintenance closet. Everything depended on whether Dr. Kim would dismiss this as the delusion of a traumatized veteran or recognize it as the desperate warning of someone who still retained the tactical knowledge that had once made her invaluable to the American war effort. "Hold on," Dr. Kim said finally. "I'm going to conference James into this call." The line went quiet except for electronic tones as the call was transferred. Ghost used the silence to organize her thoughts, to prepare the most concise possible briefing that would convey the urgency without sounding like a conspiracy theorist. She had one chance to make her case, and if she failed, those SEALs would launch into what she was increasingly certain was a carefully prepared death trap. Colonel Kim's voice came through the speaker, gravelly with sleep but instantly alert. "This is Colonel Kim. Sarah says you have information about an active operation." "Sir, my name is Esperanza Morales, former Lieutenant Commander, Naval Aviation. I was discharged 3 years ago, but I'm currently working maintenance at NAVSPCWARCOM. Tonight, I observed mission planning for what appears to be a high-value target raid in the Pakistan-Afghanistan border region. Based on my analysis of the intelligence patterns and tactical setup, I believe this operation is based on deliberately compromised information designed to lure American Special Operations Forces into an ambush." "Ms. Morales, I'm going to stop you right there. What you're describing would constitute a serious breach of operational security. Are you certain you want to continue this conversation?" Ghost felt the weight of the moment settle on her shoulders like the G-forces of a high-speed turn. She was about to burn every bridge, destroy any chance of rebuilding her military career, and potentially face federal charges for discussing classified operations. But she thought about McKinnon and his team, about the confidence in their voices as they planned an insertion into what she was certain was a kill zone. She thought about their families, their children, their dreams that would die with them in some anonymous valley halfway around the world. "Sir, I understand the implications. But if I'm right, we're about to lose an entire SEAL team because nobody with tactical aviation experience is looking at this mission from a strategic perspective. The compound location, the intelligence timeline, the communications blackout window, it's all wrong. It's too convenient, too clean, too much like what our enemies would design if they wanted to eliminate our Tier 1 capabilities in a single operation." Colonel Kim was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of someone who had spent decades making decisions that affected American lives. "Esperanza, I'm going to ask you to walk me through exactly what you observed tonight. Everything. And I want you to understand that if you're fabricating any of this information, you'll face the full consequences of federal prosecution." Ghost straightened her shoulders, feeling something she hadn't experienced in 3 years, the sensation of being needed, of having knowledge that could make a difference. For the first time since her discharge, she wasn't invisible. She began to speak, her voice steady and professional, delivering the kind of tactical briefing that had once made her invaluable to the American war effort. The words came easily, muscle memory taking over as she laid out the intelligence patterns, the tactical inconsistencies, and the strategic implications of launching an unsupported ground assault against a prepared enemy position. As she spoke, Ghost realized she wasn't just trying to save the lives of operators she had never met. She was fighting to reclaim some small piece of the person she used to be, the pilot who had once been trusted with million-dollar aircraft and life-or-death decisions. Whether anyone would listen was another question entirely. Colonel Kim absorbed Ghost's tactical analysis with the focused attention of a professional who had spent decades evaluating military operations. Her breakdown of the intelligence patterns was thorough. Her assessment of the compound's defensive advantages was accurate, and her concerns about the communications blackout window demonstrated the kind of operational thinking that came only from extensive combat experience. "Your analysis is concerning," he admitted after she finished. "But you're asking me to interfere with a presidential directive based on observations made by someone without current security clearance who was cleaning floors during a classified briefing. Sir, I understand how this looks, but consider the pattern of attacks in that region over the past 6 months. Someone has been studying American special operations tactics, learning our procedures, mapping our capabilities. This feels like the culmination of that intelligence-gathering effort, an operation designed specifically to exploit our doctrinal preferences." Ghost paused, then played her final card. "Colonel, I flew 73 combat missions over Afghanistan. I know what the enemy looks like when they're planning an ambush. The compound placement, the escape routes, the timing, everything about this operation suggests we're being manipulated." "Even if you're correct," Colonel Kim said carefully, "what exactly are you proposing? The mission launches in 15 hours. There's no time for extensive intelligence validation or operational changes." "Air support," Ghost replied immediately. "The original mission parameters call for no air cover due to Pakistani air defense concerns, but a single aircraft, flying at optimal altitude and configured for precision strikes, could provide overwatch and immediate close air support if the ground team encounters resistance. Pakistani airspace is heavily monitored. Any American military aircraft would be detected immediately, potentially causing an international incident." Ghost felt her pulse quicken as tactical solutions began forming in her mind, the same kind of creative problem-solving that had made her effective in combat situations. Not if the aircraft approached from Afghan airspace and maintained a flight profile consistent with routine border patrol operations. The F/A-18 Super Hornet has the range and loiter capability to provide continuous overwatch for the entire mission duration. "Ms. Morales, even if I agreed with your assessment, which I'm not saying I do, there are no available pilots with current qualifications for that type of mission. The operational tempo in that region requires pilots with recent combat experience and intimate knowledge of the terrain." The words hung in the air between them, unspoken implications hovering like ordnance waiting to be deployed. Ghost understood what he wasn't saying, what neither of them could say directly. She was the most qualified pilot for exactly this type of mission, but she was also a discharged maintenance worker with no official standing to participate in military operations. "Colonel," she said quietly, "what if there was a way to address the pilot qualification issue?" "Explain." "Temporary reactivation. Emergency recall to active duty. You have the authority to implement emergency personnel actions during crisis situations. If you genuinely believed American lives were in imminent danger due to intelligence failures, you could recall qualified personnel to address operational gaps." Dr. Kim's voice cut through the tactical discussion. "Esperanza, we need to consider your mental health status. You've been struggling with adjustment disorders related to your military discharge. This could be a manifestation of your desire to return to your previous role." "Doctor, with respect, this isn't about me wanting to fly again. This is about preventing a massacre. Check the intelligence reports from that region. Validate my analysis independently. If I'm wrong, then yes, this is a psychological episode and I'll accept whatever treatment you recommend. But if I'm right, then we have 12 hours to prevent the destruction of America's most elite counterterrorism capability." Colonel Kim was quiet for several minutes. Ghost could hear muffled conversations in the background, phone calls being made, the sound of a senior military officer awakening others at 500 hours to discuss classified operations with a janitor whose credentials were 3 years out of date. Ms. Morales, I'm going to ask you to remain available for the next several hours. I need to make some calls, verify some information, and discuss your concerns with people who have current operational oversight. If your analysis proves accurate, we may need to have a very different conversation about your immediate future. Understood, sir. In Esperanza, Dr. Kim added, regardless of how this develops, I want you to come in for a session tomorrow. What you've just done, taking initiative to protect others despite personal risk, that's significant progress in your recovery process. The call ended, leaving Ghost alone in the maintenance closet with her thoughts and the distant sound of night operations continuing throughout the naval facility. She had done everything she could with the information available to her. Now the decision would be made by people with actual authority, people whose careers wouldn't be destroyed by taking action on intelligence provided by a disgraced former pilot. But she had spoken up. For the first time in 3 years, she had used her training and experience to try to make a difference. Whether anyone would listen, whether her warnings would be taken seriously, whether she had just destroyed her fragile civilian life for nothing, all of that was beyond her control now. Ghost opened the maintenance closet door and returned to her cart. The briefing room would need to be cleaned again in a few hours, prepared for the next phase of mission planning. She would be there, invisible and overlooked, watching as good men prepared to walk into what she feared would become their graves. Unless someone, somewhere, decided that the tactical knowledge of a janitor might be worth preserving the lives of America's most elite warriors. The next 4 hours passed with agonizing slowness. Ghost completed her maintenance rounds with mechanical precision, while her mind raced through tactical scenarios and contingency plans. The naval facility hummed with increased activity as the mission timeline compressed, and she caught glimpses of personnel she recognized from the briefing moving through corridors with the focused urgency of professionals under extreme pressure. At 900 hours, her phone rang. Ms. Morales, this is Colonel Kim. I need you to report to Building 847, Room 203, immediately. Tell the duty officer you're there for Project Silver Eagle. Sir, I don't understand. I'm scheduled for maintenance duties until... Your maintenance duties have been temporarily suspended. Report to Building 847 now. The line went dead. Ghost stared at the phone, her heart hammering as the implication sank in. Building 847 was the administrative complex where personnel actions were processed. Promotions, transfers, disciplinary actions, and in some cases, emergency reactivations. She walked across the base with her mind racing, trying to prepare for possibilities that ranged from criminal prosecution to something she didn't dare hope for. The morning sun painted long shadows across the tarmac, and she could see aircraft in the distance. FA-18 Super Hornets lined up like deadly artwork against the azure sky. Room 203 turned out to be a small conference room containing Colonel Kim, Admiral Reeves, and a woman in civilian clothes, whose posture and bearing screamed intelligence community. On the table between them lay a stack of documents that looked suspiciously like military personnel files. Ms. Morales, Admiral Reeves said without preamble, your analysis of last night's mission planning has been evaluated by our intelligence specialists. Your concerns appear to have merit. Ghost remained standing, unsure whether to feel vindicated or terrified. Sir, I'm glad someone took the time to verify. The problem, Admiral Reeves continued, cutting her off, is that we now have less than 9 hours before mission launch, and your tactical assessment has identified several critical vulnerabilities in our operational plan. Specifically, the lack of air support for a ground team operating in compromised territory. Colonel Kim opened one of the file folders. Your flight records indicate extensive combat experience in the exact geographic region where this mission will take place. 73 combat sorties, multiple air-to-ground engagements, demonstrated proficiency in close air support operations. Sir, my discharge was 3 years ago. I haven't maintained currency in. Which brings us to the reason you're here, the intelligence officer said, speaking for the first time. Her voice carried the cool authority of someone accustomed to making decisions that affected national security. Under emergency provisions of Title 10, USC, the Secretary of the Navy has authorized your temporary recall to active duty for the specific purpose of providing air support to an ongoing special operations mission. Ghost's knees nearly buckled. After 3 years of invisibility, of being forgotten and discarded, they were offering her exactly what she had never dared hope for, a chance to return to the cockpit, to matter again, to use her skills for something that could make a difference. The mission parameters are simple, Admiral Reeves continued. You will provide continuous overwatch for SEAL Team 6 during their insertion and extraction from the target compound. You will maintain position in Afghan airspace, but be prepared to provide immediate close air support if the ground team encounters resistance. You will do this while maintaining complete radio silence unless directly engaged by hostile forces or called upon by the ground team commander. Colonel Kim slid a document across the table. Your temporary reactivation is effective immediately. Your rank is restored to lieutenant commander. You have 2 hours to complete flight physical, weapons qualification, and aircraft familiarization before launch. Ghost picked up the document with trembling hands. Her name was there, her rank, her qualifications, all officially reinstated as if the past 3 years had never happened. The signature at the bottom belonged to someone whose authority extended directly from the President of the United States. Sir, I appreciate the confidence, but I haven't flown combat missions in 3 years. The aircraft systems may have been upgraded, the tactical procedures may have changed. Your aircraft is tail number 406, Coulson Ghost Rider, Admiral Reeves said. It's been configured with the latest targeting systems and loaded with precision-guided munitions appropriate for close air support operations. Your crew chief is Master Chief Rodriguez, who specifically requested to work with you based on your previous collaboration. Ghost looked up sharply. Rodriguez had been her crew chief during her deployment to Afghanistan, a master technician who understood her flying style and had kept her aircraft in perfect condition through dozens of combat sorties. If he had requested to work with her, it meant someone had been planning this possibility for longer than the past 4 hours. How long have you been considering my reactivation? She asked. The intelligence officer smiled slightly. Let's just say that competent combat pilots are always valuable assets, regardless of their current duty status. Your maintenance position provided an excellent opportunity to observe your analytical skills and emotional stability under adverse conditions. Ghost felt the ground shift beneath her feet as she realized the implications. Her discharge, her maintenance job, even her access to the briefing room last night, it had all been orchestrated. She had been watched, evaluated, kept in reserve for exactly this type of situation. You've been testing me, she said. We've been ensuring that your capabilities remained available to the United States Navy, Colonel Kim corrected. Your tactical knowledge and combat experience are too valuable to waste, but your psychological recovery required careful monitoring. Admiral Reeves stood, his expression grave. Lieutenant Commander Morales, in approximately 8 hours, the most elite warriors in the American military will insert into hostile territory based on intelligence that may be compromised. Your job is to make sure they come home alive. Are you prepared to accept that responsibility? Ghost looked at the reactivation order in her hands, then at the 3 people who had just offered her everything she had lost. Outside the window, she could see aircraft preparing for flight operations, the same kind of preparation she had once been part of, the same life she had never stopped missing. "Yes, sir," she said. "I'm ready." 2 hours later, Ghost stood beside the sleek gray form of FA-18 Super Hornet tail number 406, her flight gear feeling both foreign and familiar after 3 years away from the cockpit. Master Chief Rodriguez completed his pre-flight inspection with the same meticulous attention to detail she remembered, his hands moving over control surfaces and weapons systems with practiced expertise. "She's loaded for bear, Lieutenant Commander," Rodriguez reported. 2 AIM-120 air-to-air missiles for defensive purposes, 4 AGM-114 Hellfire missiles for precision ground targets, and a full load of 20 cannon ammunition. All systems check green, fuel is topped off, and the targeting pod is calibrated for optimal performance in mountainous terrain. Ghost nodded, running her own visual inspection of the aircraft that would either vindicate her tactical analysis or become her tomb. The Super Hornet looked exactly as she remembered, predatory, efficient, beautiful in the way that only purpose-built weapons could be. Every line and curve was designed for speed and lethality, and sitting in that cockpit had once felt like putting on a second skin. "Any system upgrades I should know about?" she asked. "The targeting computer has been updated with the latest software, and you've got enhanced data link capability for real-time intelligence sharing. Other than that, she flies exactly like you remember." Rodriguez paused, then looked at her directly. "Ma'am, I know the past 3 years have been difficult, but I want you to know that some of us never forgot what you did over there. That Taliban convoy you took out near Firebase Shank, my nephew was in the Marine unit you saved. He's got 2 kids now." Ghost felt emotion tighten her throat. "Thank you, Master Chief. That means more than you know." The pre-flight briefing had been conducted in a secure conference room with representatives from multiple intelligence agencies. The tactical picture was clearer now, but also more disturbing. Satellite imagery showed the target compound had been reinforced since the previous night, with new positions dug along the ridgelines and additional personnel observed moving through the area. Someone was definitely expecting them. The SEAL team's insertion timeline had been accelerated to compensate for the deteriorating tactical situation. They would fast-rope from helicopters at 2300 hours local time, conduct their assault on the compound, and extract via the same helicopters by 200 hours. Ghost's mission was to provide continuous overwatch from Afghan airspace, maintain communications relay between the ground team and command center, and be prepared to engage hostile forces if the SEALs encountered resistance beyond their capability to handle. The rules of engagement were crystal clear. She could fire in defense of American forces, but any engagement would have to be both precise and devastating. There would be no second chances, no opportunity to reposition for another attack. Whatever happened would unfold in real time, with lives hanging in the balance of decisions made at the speed of thought. Ghost completed her external inspection and climbed into the cockpit. The familiar embrace of the ejection seat felt like coming home after a long exile. Her hands found controls and switches with muscle memory that 3 years of civilian life hadn't erased. The instrument panel came to life as she initiated the startup sequence, displays flickering through system checks with electronic efficiency. "Ghost Rider, this is Control Tower. You are cleared for engine start and taxi when ready." "Control Tower, Ghost Rider. Request engine start." "Ghost Rider, engine start approved. Wind is currently 270 at 8 knots, altimeter 30.12, temperature 72 degrees. Ghost's hands moved through the startup checklist with increasing confidence. The twin F404 engines spooled up with their characteristic whine, building to the powerful rumble that meant 22,000 pounds of thrust per engine. The aircraft trembled with contained energy, ready to transform from a stationary weapon into a supersonic instrument of American foreign policy. "Ghost Rider, you are cleared to taxi to runway 9R contact departure control on 121.9 when ready for takeoff. Ghost released the brakes and felt the aircraft roll forward, its landing gear carrying her toward a runway that led to missions she had never imagined possible. In the rearview mirror, she could see Master Chief Rodriguez watching her taxi, one hand raised in a farewell salute. As she approached the runway, her radio crackled with a transmission on the secure frequency. "Ghost Rider, this is